Audio Advice has designed and installed over 1,000 theaters, and this video is part of our home theater design series that covers virtually everything about designing a home theater. Your AV receiver is one of the key parts of your home theater system, and when you think about it, a home theater receiver has to be good at a whole lot of things, and every single one of those things is going to impact how good your sound quality is and even how good your picture looks. In this video, we're going to break down the features and technologies you need to pay attention to and help you decide which audio and video choices are best for you. In addition to our world-class home theater design tool, we've given you everything you need to begin your home theater journey in our Home Theater Central on audioadvice.com. The first piece to look at is to get a count of your source components and make sure your home theater receiver you choose has enough HDMI inputs to switch everything you have. We suggest having a spare input or two for future use as well. Most home theater receivers of good quality have a lot of inputs, but there's nothing worse than starting to connect everything up only to realize that you need one more input than your receiver actually has. Also, if you think it might be good to add an analog source component like a turntable, be sure the receiver has inputs for an analog source, and if you don't have a separate phono preamp already, look for one with phono inputs. Now on the switching side of things, you also want to confirm that your receiver choice will work with your source components and your display. If you buy a new 8K TV or projector and you have a source that can produce 8K, then you're going to want to make sure your receiver also is 8K capable if you plan to run those sources through it. So in this case, you want to make sure your receiver is HDMI 2.1 compliant and can pass 8K signals. At the very least, with today's proliferation of HDR content, also make sure your receiver can pass HDR10 and HDMI 2.0. Now, if your budget doesn't allow for more expensive receivers that can switch 8K and you have a TV with 8K inputs, you can just look for a unit that has eARC. This will let you connect your 8K source to your TV and send the audio down to the eARC HDMI connection. For those of you who like to get the apps in your TV for streaming, eARC should definitely be on your list, as it will be able to get the best feed in full Dolby Atmos for your TV to your receiver. Next, you'll want to think about the number of channels you'll need. Home theater receivers these days have anywhere from 5 to 13 powered channels. If you think you'll never need more than the basic Dolby Digital system of 3 front speakers and a pair of surround speakers, a 5-channel receiver may be fine for your needs. However, if you have thoughts of adding to your system now or later, consider a receiver with more channels on board. If you're thinking about doing Dolby Atmos, you'll need at least 7 powered channels, and in most cases, you're going to want 11 powered depending on your setup. You can check out our home theater buyer's guide on audioadvice.com to learn more about all the different possible home theater speaker layouts and to see which might fit your needs best. Now, a quick audio advice tip. Some receivers give you the ability to decode more channels than they have amplifiers on board. For example, a receiver may only have 7 powered channels but give you non-powered outputs for up to 11. These outputs are called preamp outputs. They would need to connect up to a power amplifier to drive the additional speakers. But this is one way to future-proof your system. You can get a 7-channel receiver now, then if you decide to take things up to 11 channels, add more speakers and an amplifier later on. This can save you money up front, but give you the option to add more value in your future. When you're looking at receivers, you'll see power ratings for how much power the receiver can provide. Way back in the 1970s, when there was a power war going on among brands, you'd see all kinds of crazy power ratings as there was no standard back then. People in the business back then fondly remember the term 1000 watts ISBL. This jokingly meant 1000 watts if struck by lightning. The FCC soon jumped in and made brands standardize on a power rating, and it was way easier to compare models. The FCC made the brands say what the wattage rating was with all channels driven and at what frequency range and at what distortion level. A typical rating might have been 100 watts per channel with both channels driven from 20 Hz to 20 kHz at 0.01% distortion. Most brands rated their power within the specification criteria to make it easier for consumers to compare. However, right now, we're seeing the Wild West appear again in power ratings. You really have to read the fine print to determine if the stated power is real or not. The brands are still doing what the FCC requires, but printing ratings do not apply to real life. One of the easiest frequency ranges to push an amplifier is 1000 Hz. We see some brands rating their power at 1000 Hz instead of the entire audio range of 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz. We also find power rated at only 1 channel driven instead of the all 5, 7, or 11, and we see very high distortion numbers on that spec. What may read like a 100 watt per channel receiver may actually only be 30 watt per channel unit if you measure it with all the channels driven across whole frequency range and at a normal distortion level. Now, why is this important? Movie soundtracks can be extremely dynamic. This means they could jump from a whisper to a loud crash in a split second. To deliver those great dynamics, your power source, or usually your receiver typically, needs to be able to handle those transient power demands. Being able to do 100 watts at 1000 hertz does you no good when you want to capture the sound of an explosion. You need to hear a full frequency range. It's even more important now with Dolby Atmos. In the past, the power needs of the surround speakers were somewhat minimal, but with Dolby Atmos, those surround speakers now get big, full range sound and at the same time as all your other speakers. You're going to want to get a receiver that has a big power supply. This is the part that provides power to all of the components inside the receiver. The bigger the power supply, the better the receiver will handle the dynamics of a movie. Quick audio advice tip: if you don't want to try and dissect all the power ratings, just look at the total weight of the receiver. If it's heavier than 20 pounds, it probably has a decent power supply and a pretty good amplifier section. Just be very leery of components quoting a lot of power, like over 100 watts, that are lightweight, because they most likely won't sound very good. There may be some instances where the receiver has a very good Class D amplifier section which could weigh less, but it's hard to tell good from bad. The even better solution is to call or chat with the experts at audioadvice.com and we'll let you know. As you might imagine, since we live and breathe audio in home theaters, we already know which products have the inflated specifications and which actually conservatively rate them, so our experts can make sure your receiver has the necessary power for your particular home theater. Another important factor in a home theater receiver is its decoder and DACs. DAC stands for Digital to Analog Converter. This system takes the incoming digital signal and converts it to analog for our ears. Unless you're really up on DAC technology, it's actually pretty hard to read a spec and know a good DAC from a bad one. But the difference a DAC can have on the sound can actually be profound. Most brands will state the type of DAC they use, and if you're geeks like us, you can actually just Google the part number and find out its cost, which as a general rule relates to the performance. We've done this and we've seen them range from under 50 cents to $10+. So typically, the more expensive receiver you have, the better DACs it will have inside. Now, if you also plan to use your home theater for home audio and you like high-res audio, make sure the DACs in the home theater receiver are capable of decoding those great high-res audio files. When you look at the specs and see the DAC can do 24/192, that means you should be good for high-resolution files. Now, bear in mind that even for DACs that can play high-resolution files, there are sonic differences between good, better, and best DACs. If you're into great audio and want to make sure the DACs and sound are high performance for a receiver, you'll save a lot of time by talking to one of our experts versus trying to decipher the specs on your own. Next, let's talk about streaming services. They've become extremely popular for listening to music in the last few years. It seems that almost all audio systems today offer some way of enjoying music. Ideally, your home theater receiver will have the services built right into it. Of course, Bluetooth, Chromecast, and Apple AirPlay 2 are other ways to deliver all the fun of streaming music to your home theater receiver. Some of the higher performance home theater receivers may not have every service built in, but you should certainly expect to see a way to enjoy streaming music on any modern home theater receiver. If you're an Alexa fan or a Google Assistant lover, you'll want to consider this feature in your home theater receiver as well. However, not all brands want to pay their royalty fees to those big tech companies and opt in, so they just leave it off. So our opinion is that you probably shouldn't focus too much on the voice control part and try to just focus more on the performance. It's only going to take a couple of seconds to turn on a receiver if you're using your voice or a standard remote, but then you're going to be sitting there for 2 to 3 hours listening to it. We think you should definitely prioritize the experience over the bells and whistles of voice control. Now, app control to us is somewhat like voice control. It is a nice addition, but it should probably, again, not play a huge role in your decision. If the one you decide on has it, great, but don't rule out that wonderful sounding high performance piece just because it doesn't have app control or voice control. Another cool feature is that some home theater receivers give you the option of powering multiple rooms from that one receiver. Usually to do this, you have to give up a pair or more of your surround sound channels, or with some receivers, you have to have the option of adding a small amplifier to drive that second zone or third zone. So this is a pretty neat feature if your home theater receiver has streaming services built in, but for the full enjoyment of surround sound, we would just get sound in that other room a different way rather than giving up a pair or more of surround sound channels. Now, another factor to look at in your home theater receiver is its setup flexibility. Most of the better ones have gotten pretty good at this, But you may have a specific need that not every receiver is capable of. One thing we like to see is the ability to assign a source to more than one input and have the ability to have a different video and audio source. One great example of this is watching a sporting event on the television while the receiver plays the audio from a local radio station announcer instead of the audio from the television channel. Another example might be someone who likes to listen to music while casually watching the news. We also like home theater receivers that give us more flexibility in adjusting levels and crossover points. Finding out these answers will either require a deep dive into the online manual or just give one of our experts a call. The last big component of a home theater receiver is what it can do to make your system sound better in your environment. Just a few short years ago, this wasn't even possible, but we've seen huge advances in automatic room equalization. When a speaker is designed and tested in a special anechoic chamber, it will have a pretty even response from top to bottom. But when this speaker goes into a typical room and its sound waves start interacting with the walls, the floor, and the ceiling, the response you get can look like the Swiss Alps. While it's hard to fix the dips caused by the room, a good equalization system can knock down the peaks, getting you much closer to the sound the speaker maker intended. Most home theater receivers in the $1,000 price range and up will include some sort of equalization system. And we cannot recommend these systems more highly as they have a huge benefit to your room. Anthem Room Correction and Dirac are a couple of the very best calibration systems on the market right now. So if you see one of these, you know it's very good. Now, as we stated in the beginning, there's an awful lot going on inside a home theater receiver. This is why separate components are a great option for people who want even better sound. A home theater receiver has the preamp section that does all the switching, the digital to analog conversion, routing of all the signals, decoding of the surround stream, and any room equalization. That is a lot. It also has an amplifier for each of the powered channels. Now, if you think about it, the signals coming into a surround sound receiver are very low in level. The circuitry supporting those signals needs super accurate and steady power supplied to it. Yet, when a big dynamic peak hits, your speakers are screaming out to the receiver to give them more power. This can cause a drain on the power going to the critically low level components and result in a bit of a harsh or muddled sound. The demands on a receiver's power supply are almost totally opposite each other. On one end, you'll want a very steady, low-level, pure power with no deviation for the preamp section, yet the amplifier section wants wild power swings to handle the dynamics of a movie or a concert soundtrack. This is where separate components come in. With separates, you buy what is called a surround sound processor and separate amplifiers. The surround sound processor only has to deal with the low-level signals, and the amplifiers have to drive the speakers. The resulting sound improvement is usually quite significant, especially with a great speaker system. One huge advantage of separates is the lifetime cost. Amplifier technology has been pretty stable for many years. As a matter of fact, some of the 20 and 30-year-old power amps still have great sound today. However, the decoding side of home theater seems to improve every few years. If you invest in great amplifiers, you'll have them for decades, and they'll provide you the best possible sound to your speakers. When technology changes enough that you want to upgrade, you only have to change the surround sound processor, and you can keep your great amplifiers. So depending on your situation, you may find purchasing separates is better, or that a good receiver is just the perfect fit for you. If you're thinking about upgrading your theater, check out our home theater page at audioadvice.com. There we have our free home theater design tool, buyer's guides, how-to videos, an inspiration gallery, and everything you need home theater related. Now, we hope this guide to choosing your home theater receiver has helped you narrow down what's important for you and the long-term goals of your home theater or media room. If you have any questions at all, we are here to help. You can reach us at audioadvice.com via phone, chat, email, or just stop by one of our world-class showrooms. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Also hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our latest content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.